please tell me your name?
My name is Dorothy Count Scoggins, and I live in the Biddleville Smallwood community on the west side of Charlotte, and we call it the Northwest Corridor. I've lived in that community for the last 30 years. I've lived in the current home that I'm in now for 20 years, and then before that I lived in McCrory Heights, which is also on the Northwest Corridor. I consider the Northwest Corridor home because I grew up on the west side. My parents moved to Charlotte when I was 4 years old. My father was a professor at Johnson C. Smith University and also a Presbyterian minister. So the west side is home for me. Around Johnson C. Smith, but not only around the campus, but along the Northwest Corridor, I consider that to be, at one time we called that Black Wall Street because the businesses along that corridor were all owned by black residents that lived on the corridor. And so there's a lot of history that is a part of the West Side. The West Side History Club is important because this is a generation of young people that are growing up that have no knowledge of the history of that part of Charlotte. And a lot of that, it's not necessarily their fault. A lot of that has to do that their parents don't have that history as well. But it's not something that's taught in school. For me, growing up, things were a lot different than they are today, but I learned the history from my parents, but also from my grandparents. So when my children came along, I made sure that they had got the same kind of education so that they would have that history. So I think the West Side History Club is a good piece for these kids to be involved in so that they can have that, what I call generational history.
That's all I need for the West Side History Club. I wanted to ask you briefly about Mecklenburg County and what your experience has been sort of with the county, calling it home, what you think they can do better for the West Side, that type of direction.
Well, I think I call Charlotte home. I've always felt that it was a good place to live. I left Charlotte after graduating from college, moved to New York, worked in New York, and then one day I woke up and said, I'm going home. This was not a place for me. Not only that, I wanted to start a family, and I felt that Charlotte was the place that I would want to start my family. Even though when I moved back to Charlotte, Charlotte was still segregated in a lot of ways. But I guess I was optimistic because I saw things beginning to change in Charlotte. Not only that, it was growing at that pace. This was in the late 60s, and the pace that it was growing was not the same pace that it's growing today. I think what happened to the West Side is that a lot of the people who lived on the West Side, as they aged out, some of them died, left property to their children and other relatives, but they didn't see the significance of the West Side like their parents did. So what happened was that the property and the things that we were used to, the amenities that we had, that I had growing up, started dwindling. And then because like in any other community across the country, when that begins to happen, then it becomes what I call the forgotten part of the city. So we have had some, I would say maybe in the last 5 or 6 years, and I will give some of it the credit to when Dr. Carter came to Johnson C. Smith. That was one of the things that he did do in terms of getting out in the community and making sure that people were aware of what was on the West Side, the importance of the history. And as a result of that, a lot of different groups formed trying to be able to restore the history of the West Side. when you think about it, it's going to take a while. It's not going to happen overnight. It didn't go down overnight. But so I think as far as Mecklenburg County and the city, I think they're beginning to pay attention to the kinds of things that we should have, especially when I say we, I'm thinking in terms of the amenities and other kinds of things that other people in Charlotte should have. And when you think about the goal line was probably one of the biggest things that happened. And then, of course, the other part of it is small black business owners. We need to have more of that in development on the west side. And that's beginning to help through the Knight Foundation and some other organizations that are making an investment on the west side.
Are you proud to call Mecklenburg County home?
I'm proud to call Mecklenburg County home. I wouldn't live anyplace else. And I've had other opportunities, but this is home. As I said earlier, my parents moved here and when I was 4 years old, 1946, and I've always felt that this is home. Now, I lived in South Charlotte for 17 years, but when my husband and I separated, then I said, I'm going home. So I called the west side home. So